going on, everyone? Miles here from Rings of Saturn and Interloper. I'm going to talk to you about my gear, my rig, and how I run all of it. So let's go ahead and talk about some of the gear that I use. We'll start out with my strings. I'm using Elixir strings. I've been using these for many years. I absolutely love them. I'm using a custom light set, 9-46 of nano-webs. With electric guitar, I like to use the nano-webs as opposed to poly-web. Poly-web are great, but I prefer those on an acoustic guitar. So, as you can see, this is a 6-string set, and I also do play 7 and 8 strings. They do make a 7-string set, however, I prefer 9-gauge strings. So what I do is I get this, and then a single 56. This is also a nano-web string. And then for my 8 string, I get a single 80-gauge. This is a bass string through them, so if you're having a hard time finding it, look at their bass strings. This is an 80-gauge, also nano-web. So that's how I'm running my strings with Elixirs on an 8 string. So I get that question a lot. So there you go. So now let's talk about my pickups and picks that I use, as well as a couple of other things. So for pickups, I'm using Seymour Duncan. Here's a Pegasus. This is what I have in the bridge of my 8 string, and then here's a 7-string Black Winter that I cannot wait to try out. I haven't had a chance to put it in yet, but that's what I have there. So now with my picks, I'm using a Dunlop Tortex Pitch Black Jazz 1.14 picks. I've been using these since I was probably 15. So they look like this, little tiny black picks right here. Got a little turtle on them. Won't focus, but that's what they are. Love them. Haven't tried a whole bunch of other picks, and I just end up with these every single time. So going from there, there's a couple other things in here I want to point out. We have some polish and cleaner stuff. A lot of people do use this Dunlop. I've been using it for years. It's very good. However, Hosa sent me out some of their cleaner, and it's through Gobi Labs. They sent me out a couple different things, fretboard conditioner and such. Tried it out. It worked really well too. So if you're ever in the market for some of this, give that stuff a try. And another thing they sent out, which is quite interesting, is a cable tester. I'm sure all of you have experienced a cable that stops working at some point. Sometimes it's something simple, sometimes the cable's actually broken. So now with this tester, I will be able to find out what the actual problem is, which is quite nice. So now, as I mentioned, Hosa, they sent me out some cables as well. I'm using all of their cables for my live rig and my studio rig at home. I've got snakes here, I've got microphone cables, USB cables, I've got aux cables, I've got TRS to 3.5 millimeter. I mean, I have everything that I need to run everything through them. One thing I'd like to point out with them, though, is a lot of people do think they are a budget cable. They do have this new Edge series, which is quite good. This is a microphone cable, but it's extremely quiet. It's like a really quiet cable, which is nice. So if you ever played with a cable that's like noisy, or if you just like get too close to it, it starts making noise, these don't do that, which is great. So one last thing I'd like to point out is this case. Running a live session live, I'm using my laptop, and I don't want that to break. So what I got was a hard shell case. I got through a company in Orange called Foam Plastics and Rubber Products. And yeah, it's just basically like a metal briefcase. I put some foam in here so my laptop will sit in, put foam on top, the charger fits in, any other cables I might need. I can put all sorts of paperwork in here if I need. Very handy. It's got a code lock and then some key locks as well, so get into my stuff. So for guitars, I play Schecter guitars. I have 2 Banshee Elite models. One is an 8, one is a 7. Some things about them that are very cool are these stainless steel frets. Awesome. We have ebony fretboard. We have a maple and walnut neck, a flamed maple top. Both of them have that, and a swamp ash body. Very cool guitars. This is the 8. And I'll show you the 7. So the 7's identical to this, aside from it having one less string. It also has a Floyd Rose, which is quite nice. And another thing that's really cool about this guitar that I love is it's actually not the guitar, it's the pickup. So what we have here is a Sustainiac pickup. It's a pickup that Schecter makes, I believe, and it is really cool. It gives you 3 different options, like 2 different overtones and then one that just holds the note out, like the note just doesn't stop. Really cool pickup. So yeah, I've been playing on these guitars for a couple of years, but yeah, love them. So let's go ahead and talk about the amps that I use. Behind me you can see that I do have an Axe-Fx. It is the Axe-Fx 2 XL. Thank you very much for the people over at Fractal Audio for getting me set up with that. You guys are awesome. Let's look at the signal chain that I'm using. As you can see, this is the 8-strong Dank Memes channel. It's just my rhythm tone. So what we have is a gate, compressor, drive, amp, cab. We have an EQ and a filter. So pretty simple. So in our gate, we don't have it up too high, nothing too crazy. Compressor. I wasn't using one of these for quite some time. I should have been, because it levels out your playing coming out. So when you're playing a lead, it's like real quiet, and then when you play your rhythm part, it's like super loud again. This levels that out. So pretty interesting and very useful. Should definitely use one. This happens to be the studio compressor. So going from there, let's look at our drive. This is the T808 overdrive. I have my drive pretty low. I like tones that aren't overly gainy because I just don't think it sounds good. So the drive on here is at 1.2 out of 10. So yeah, pretty low. Going from there, the amp I have is DOS Metal. I got this idea from Brian James from Fallujah, but this was like 4 years ago before he was in Fallujah. We were both in this band called Animus. Got an Axe-Fx, this was his, he gave me his tone, and then every time I made one, I just used that. That was the way it was. So thank you, Brian. But going from there, looking at this, I have the presence up pretty high. I like having a higher presence. It, gives it more presence. It's just clearer. It sounds better in my opinion. The depth is up a little bit. And yeah, that's about it for that. The GEQ on here should be pretty flat, and it is. Good. Preamp, what are we looking at here? We have definition, harmonics, I messed with those a little bit. Tone frequency, I messed with a little bit. The power amp, let's look what we're doing here. I think I messed with the presence a little bit. I mean, obviously messed with all this a little bit, but those are kind of the things that I, focused on when I was messing with this. Going from there, the power supply, I don't have a clue. The speaker, I did a little bit on here, I believe. So as you can see, I boosted some of the low end here and then cut a little bit of the high. I don't think that did too much. The speaker drive, doesn't look like I touched that. And then the dynamics. So the pick attack I turned up, preamp dynamics, dynamic depth I turned up a little bit. Some of the stuff I messed around with a bit, but some of it I didn't as well. The dynamic presence is something I also messed with. But that's my amp setting. This is what I use. More or less, depends on everyone's pickup settings and preference, and I'm always changing this stuff too, messing with this all the time. So, going from there, let's look at our cab. This one was interesting. This is a lot of fun. So, the effect type is high, ultra res, and I'm using a 4x12 Uber Vintage 30 RW, whatever the RW means, I don't know. So, a couple interesting things on here. Speaker size, very important. Low cut, I did at 61. I could probably pull that up a little higher, but the speaker size, definitely, you do hear that. And then the proximity as well, and proximity frequency, you do notice a little bit with that. So going from there, saturation's up, bass, mid, trebles, all flat. I do most of that, like the EQ afterwards. And a lot of this stuff, I talk with Andrew. He's really into this. He does a lot of mixing, mastering. And I'm like totally clueless. So this is just like the little stuff I've learned to get the tone that I have. So if I have a question, I call him. But like I said, I am not a guy who knows all this stuff. I usually just kind of turn knobs until it sounds cool. So going from there, the room, this is something that made a huge difference on the cab setting, is the room level size, mic spacing, air, and air frequency. Crazy, right? So this setting, this section of the cab was a huge deal. This made a lot of difference in sound, so you could spend a ton of time with this stuff. But yeah, that's my cab setting. So now let's look at my EQ. So I have some of the low end pulled out, and low end's pulled out for the most part. The most important thing to note here that I am most familiar with explaining is the 4K is pulled very low. It gets rid of a lot of the hissing sound you hear in a guitar tone, like with your distortion. You get a lot of that high pitched kind of, just sounds like a hiss. That pulls it out. So that's the main thing I do when I'm EQing. Everything else I kind of just, pushing things until it sounds cool. So going from there, filter. This is a high pass filter, I believe. Yeah, got rid of some of the low end, which oddly some of that looks like it was boosted in this one. Yeah. Running a high pass because some of the low end is unnecessary. It's like I think 100 hertz you can't really hear, but it just takes up space in your mix. But yeah, so that's my Axe-Fx tone. That's how I'm running that. Like I said earlier, though, it is always changing, and this is just my rhythm tone. My lead tone's pretty similar. Probably put reverb and delay on it. Actually, no, I put reverb and delay on it. I might end up putting on my rhythm tone just a small amount of reverb though, because that is kind of important. It kind of gets rid of some of the dryness, but you have to use a very small amount. But yeah. That's my Axe-Fx tone. Let's look at bias now. So as we see here, this is set up pretty similar to my Axe-Fx tone as far as the signal chain goes. We have gate, compression, drive, got the amp, EQ, and there should be delay and reverb. So it's pretty close to it. But we do have some differences here. So looking at the gate, I have to turn the gate up a little bit higher in bias effects. I notice it's a little bit noisier of a plugin. Then the compression, pretty standard. The drive, also very low drive. But here we have a splitter, so I'm running two different amps. So I'm running an Insane 5153 for the first one. Those are my settings, as you can see there. And then for the cab, I'm using a 4x12 Celestion Vintage 30s with the SM57 mic offset to the right just a bit. Going from there, the second amp that I'm using is the Monster VH4. The cab I'm using is 4x12 Orange Vintage 30s, SM57 also offset to the right. So pretty similar, and then those go into the mixer here, split back into one signal, and go through my EQ. So my EQ in this is boosted on the low end, which is strange, there must be a reason for that. But again, we can see that 2K, 4K is pulled out pretty low. Some of the high end's pulled out. I think bias had a little bit more high end in it. Is probably what I'm assuming here. I've been using this tone for a while, so I haven't thought about it. But yeah, going from there, we have our delay, pretty standard, pretty low. Doesn't last too long, and then our reverb, also pretty low. And this is on my rhythm tone, so yeah, that's my bias effects tone. So now there's something else I want to talk about that's pretty cool about this. With bias effects, as well as the axe effects, you can do this, but I'll point out specifically with bias effects what you can do. So unfortunately, you can't run automation within it to change patches at certain points. But what you can do, and what I do live, is I have 3 different tracks going. I have a rhythm, I have a lead, and I have a clean. So what I have going is all 3 of those at the same time, like I just said. And what I do, though, is I bypass. So what you can do is you go to your automation on your track, and you put a mute automation as well as a bypass automation. That way you can mute it or bypass it, which will stop the effects, like the plugin, from going. So when I have, for example here, this is my rhythm tone going the whole time. Here's my lead tone. It is bypassed as well as muted. So that plugin is making no noise. It's not even running, so it's not taking up CPU. That's the whole point of bypassing it. I don't want to be using excess CPU when I don't have to. Same thing applies with the clean channel. So looking over here, when I want to have my lead channel going, I mute my rhythm and I bypass it, as you can see. Right here, it's mute and it's bypassed. And then my lead channel is now unmuted and normal, which is not bypassed. So that's a pretty cool thing. That's basically just plug-in automation with bias. It's more, I guess you could say, mute and bypass automation, since the plugin doesn't actually have that. But yeah, so that's how I've been doing that live. You would do the same exact thing with an axe effect. So you just make a little envelope point here and, pull it down, pull it up. But instead, you would be having it for a MIDI signal. So it would be sending out a, totally ignoring Aaron's phone call right now. But yeah, you do the same thing with a MIDI signal. It would send MIDI 1 out to axe effects, patch, whatever. And it changes for you. It's really nice. So this way you don't have to work with pedal boards, which, can be cool. Pedal boards are sweet, don't get me wrong, but live it's a little harder to, be playing some of this stuff and trying to use a pedal board. I have soloed on a clean channel far too many times. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. This is pretty much how I run my entire live setup. I'm using Hosa cables for pretty much everything. Got Reaper as my DAW. Reaper is actually awesome, for those of you who say it's not. Don't believe you. Bias effects, or I could be running my axe effects. Just depends what I want to use. Went through my signal chain, went through all the gear I use, went through my signal chain on my axe effects as well. Yeah, so that should be everything that you need to or can know about my tone and my gear. See you next time.